Let's learn. Kum Lenin Ablat Gemara. We are up to Daf Chav Gimel Amr Aleph. Okay. We're up to the two dots, about 10 lines on top of the page. That again, the Gemara is going to digress. We talked about for Kiddush HaChodesh, when they decided to make the new moon, they would have people standing up on the mountains and they would pass, show the fire so everybody can actually see them. And we finished saying that they only had these torches when it was a 29-day month, not when it was a 30-day month. So that's how people knew precisely where the Chodesh is. And this all stopped when the Slukim and the Baisusim started to meddle and interfere and disrupt this whole process. So the Gemara is 10 lines on the page, and the Gemara is going to digress. We mentioned that the torches they used was made out of a cedar tree. So we are going to talk about the different kinds of cedar trees. We have a little bit of that in Beya and other places as well. So says the Gemara, I'm not a fay with the names of all the different kinds of species of cedar trees. We'll just go through the Gemara. Dalad mine arazim. There are actually 4 different kinds of cedar trees. One is called Erez, one is called Katrum, one is called Eitz Shemen, and one is called Barosh. Says the Gemara. Katrum, Amar Rav says Adra. That's what we know as Adra. We had that in Satbeya, the Adir. And certain species. And Rav Shela says that it's actually known as Mavliga. Others say it's a Gulmish. Others say no, it's a different species altogether known as Gulmish. These are different kind of trees that fall under the so Erez is a specific kind of cedar tree, plus it's a generic name for all the trees that are similar. Pliga, and this argues with the Rabba Ravuna. The Amar Rabba Baravuna, Amri Beirav, the Shiva Rav, they said that Asara min arazir. You say there are 4, there are actually 10 different kinds of arazim. How do I know that? Shnema, because it says a pasuk, Etin b'midbar, I will give you in the midbar, Erez, which is one, Shita, which is another one, Hadas, which we know what that is, the middle of the 8th Shemen, and then we have the Osim. So that's already Erez, Shita, Hadas, 8 Shemen is 4. Then Osim Baraba, I'll also put out there in the desert. There will be also 3 kinds: Broish, Tidar, Us Asher, Yachd, they'll all be together. So these are only 7 kinds. We'll see in a minute. Erez is what we call Arza. That's the cedar tree. And Shita is what's known as Tunisa. And Hadas is what's known as the Asa, as we know that. That's the Hadas. And the Shem is known as the Aparsma, which we also know that's the Balsam tree. And then Baruch is Barota. That's what that is. And Tidar is Shaga, another kind of tree, and Ta'asher is Shurbina. Says the Gemara, I don't understand. You said there'll be 10. Hani Shiva is only a total of 7. He said, Hoisifu Alim, they added another 3. What did they add? They added Alunim, Almunim, and Almugin. And what is that? Alunim, that is known as Butmi, and Almunim is known as Bluti, and Almugin is known as Kasisa, which Rashi says is Korah. So these are the 10 different kinds of trees that fall under the banner of Erez. Ikedamri, the others say that Arugim is Armoinim, that Arugim is actually Armoinim, and that Almunin is Arugim, and Almunin is Azarugim, and what do you call it? And Arugim, Armonim is, and what do you call it? We'll start again. Sorry. Ikedamri, others say Arugim, Armoinim, Almogin. There are 3 different kinds. Arugim is known as Ori, and Armoinim is known as Dulvi, and Almugin is what's Kusisa, which is the Koral. Okay, the pasuk says Betzi Adir, and these large, strong ships, Le'avrenu, will not be able to pass the waters. The waters will be with such rapid waters, as Rashi says, emanating from the base of Mikdash. Mashiach will come, that even a large ship will not be able to cross it. Amar Rav, what is this? Zuburni Gedola, a very large ship. Heichi Avdi, what would they do? So what do they do? What exactly would they do with these large ships? What's the purpose of these large ships in that area? So we say the following. is Maisi. They would bring Shit Alfi Gabri 6,000 people, but Teresa Yarche working for 12 months. Shasa a year. I'm others say Teresa Alfi Gabri, there'll be 12,000 people. Bishisa Yarche Shasa 6 months of the year. The Ton of Lacholam, and they would carry sand. So this would happen. They would go to a low part of the sea, the river, and they would fill this burnie with sand ad shachna until basically it rested on the ground, and then when the weight of the sand would make the ship, rest on the sea floor, but it was very shallow, so the ship was still sticking out. And this is where the corral was. The Nochis and then Bar Amoroi, these swimmers, these divers, will go under the water. The Kotter Atuni de Kisna Bekasisa, they were tied with ropes of flax. The Kissa to the corral on the bottom, on the ground, on the seafloor. The Kotter Besinta, they would tie the other end to a ship. Then, so right now the ship is sunk down because of the weight of the sand, and then slowly the they would take the sand and remove the sand from the boat. And as they remove the sand of the boat, the boat boy would rise, and the kama de medallion, and as the boat lifts up, okra umasya, it will rip out some of the corral from the seabed and lift it. Train bekaspa, and the corral was worth one measure of the corral is equal to 2 of the silver. Klas Parvus Ahavan, with 3 ports. Tarti Be'amoya, 2 of them were either in Rome or with Rami, and the Chod of the Be'Pashay, 1 was Persia. The Be'amoya, the ports were there in Amoy, Moscow, and Kasisa. They took out the actual corral. The Bey Parsay, the Persian port, Maskin Marganisa, they were able to go and take out the pearls from this corral. Umekari, and that port is called Parvasa de Mishamig, the port of the king. Yes, because they got the best part of the corral. Omar Rabbi Yechon says, Kol Shita V'Shita, every single tree. Known as Shita, we said before, it is in the Shita, so every tree, every Shita that Shenot L'Nochem Mishalayim, the Goyim removed from Mishalayim, Asid HaKadosh Baruch Hu L'Hachzin L'Lev, once again, bring all the trees back. Shenemar says a posik, Etin, I will place Bamidbar, Erez Shita. It says Erez as well. So maybe Erez didn't grow in Shalim, but Shita did. So they pulled out the Shita and brought it back. The Ein Midbar Eli Shalim. And how do I know it says Etin by Midbar is referring to Shalim? Because sometimes the Shalim is referred to as a Midbar. Shenemar, because it says in Posik, Midbar Hoysa Tzia Midbar Hoysa, as the Posik talks about, it will be desolate. So it refers to it, uses an example for them. It compares Yerushalayim to a midbar. Amar Rabbi said, talking about these things, anyone who studies Torah, the Einam Alam, doesn't share it with other people, Hadas is a beautiful tree, but growing in the midbar, who appreciates it? Same thing, a person is full of knowledge and doesn't share it, doesn't disseminate it, is like a Hadas growing in the midbar, which is pathetic. Ikedam, the other saying that it's actually a compliment. Anybody who learns Torah and he teaches it, in a place where there are no Tamid Chamim, or the people who are not Tamid Chamim, on the contrary, it's like an oasis. Everybody appreciates it. Same over here. Since there's nobody else doing it, and you stepped up to the plate and you're teaching it, you're wonderful. The Chaviv that is so much desired and loved. Rabbi said, pity to the goy, those who shepherd Eden, those who bother Eden, have no remedy. It says, everything has a substitute. There's nothing that's indispensable or replaceable. Instead of copper, it'll be gold. Tachas abarzl, I'll be kesef. In place of metal, I'll bring silver. Tachas eitzim, the in place of wood, I'll bring copper. Tachas avonim, barzl, in place of stone, I'll bring metal. Tachas Rabbi Akiva v'chaveid in the place of Rabbi Akiva's friends, Asori Ruga Malchus. What am I going to be? Is there a substitute? He says no. And then he says, "V'ni Casey, I will forgive. But damam, for the blood that they spilled, Leni Casey, that I will never forgive." So anyhow, so then we explained those mountains, that they went on top of the mountains and they went and they all shine. They had one torch, and then there's another torch, kilometers later on another mountain, until finally came to Beis Baltin. So the Gemara says, "My Beis Baltin, where in the world is this place called Beis Baltin?" Yeah. So Omar Rab Zu Beirim. You know what it is? That's a place called Beirim. In other words, the tip of Eretz Yisrael, the very end of Eretz Yisrael. My Goyle, and then it says that from there, the people in Golos were able to see, and from base of mountain, he said that that's the last mountain at Yisrael. They would stand on the mountain and they would wave their torch back and forth, until they saw the entire Goyle appear to them, standing on the mountain of one big bonfire. So first of all, what do you mean, my Goyle? Which part of Golos? You can't see the entire Goyle. We're talking about the main city there was Pumbedisa. The main cities that were there. Surah, Maike, Madura, Aish, and then it says, standing on the mountain, they look at the Goyle, the Pumbedisa, the pit, like the whole Pumbedisa is on fire, big bonfire. What do you mean? This is what happened. When these people were on this base mountain, the very last point of Yisrael, and he waited, and other people saw them. What happened was, every person in Pumbedisa, take a torch in his hand, but will go on the roof of their house. Imagine that scene. And so therefore we looked at Pumbedisa, and at the top of every house there's a person with a torch. It looked like it was one big fire. Tanya, Rab Shimon ben Lazar said, there were other mountains as well that they used to climb in Yisrael, and they would bring the torch, which were they, Avhodim, Chodim. They should bring also the places called mountain called Chodim, and V'chayor, and V'geder, V'chaveriseh, and it's other mountains similar. Some say Beini Uveni Havakaima. We were those mountains. Between the mountains we mentioned over here, there were other mountains in between. There was a step up there as well. Lahach Gisa the Eretz Yisrael Havakaima. Other one says no. What we described here, these mountains were, let's say, the east side of Eretz Yisrael, and another one was the west side of Eretz Yisrael. So there were two different sets of mountains, series of mountains, two sides of Eretz Yisrael. Mar Choshev the Hagisa, Mar Choshev the Hagisa. One person was counting one side, and the other one, and one side of Yisrael, the mountain, and Rav Shimon was counting the other side. In every mountain was 8 parsois. It's 8 parsois, which 4 mil to a parsa, that's 32 mil, roughly 32 kilometers. Kama Havelu, how much is that? 32. Says in Tuva, if you want to travel from Yerushalayim to go to these places, a lot far further than 32. In other words, if you go in a straight line, it would be 32. However, because we cannot go in a straight line and the roads are blocked and have to be windy roads, therefore it's far greater than 32 kilometers. And he says, how do I know that? I filled up basically all of your roads and I put their thorns. In other words, I put obstacles on the road, so you have to go in a different way, and that's why it takes so much longer. It says, my roads, Eva, they are all circular, they're all windy, and therefore you cannot go in a straight line. That's why it takes so long. So Marna continues describing what happened. So they came on Shabbos, and where did they go? There was a large courtyard in Shalim. Beis Yazik Hoisanikras. It was referred to as Beis Yazik. Ulisham, and there Kola Eidim Wisconsin. That's where the witnesses used to join together on Shabbos. Bezdin Boikin Oisim Sham, and that's what Bezdin used to check them out. Hear what they had to say. And we took them in. We were very hospitable. We made large meals, so they had a good time. They schmoozed together, fabring together. We're happy. We wanted to entice them to make sure they say, "Oh, what a wonderful Shabbos we had." They'll come again. But in the beginning, they were more or less locked down or locked up in this chutzah. They couldn't leave. Why not? Because they traveled more than Chum Shabbos, and the rule is if you travel more than Chum Shabbos, wherever, even though it was legal for that, but we said before, you're allowed to Mechal Shabbos, once they arrive, they're not allowed to walk even 1 inch. He's scared out of Gamliel Zakin, and Gamliel Zakin said people didn't like that. They said, why should I come Shabbos and be treated like a prisoner? So they should be treated no different than anybody else in the citizen, because they traveled there, they were permitted, so they didn't breach any laws, so they should be treated like anybody in Yerushalayim. And we're not only talking about this case here where we said you're allowed to travel more than Chumash Shabbos, that, and once you arrive at your destination, we're not going to limit your walking. We're going to say you're no different than the locals. Also, a woman is coming to help someone to give birth. Or you want to say people from a large fire, and a gayas, and from the Moradors, or Minanor, from the river was threatening to flood everybody. And so therefore, From an avalanche or a building that fell apart, that imploded. We're also going to say, of course, you're allowed to be Mechal Shabbos, you can walk right past the Chum, but once you get there, you can still walk no different than any member of the citizens. 2,000 in each direction. Because I'm concerned if we make it too harsh, too difficult, they're not going to try to save people's lives. Again, we're going to digress. The word you use or the name you gave to this chutzah called Beis Yazik. Is it sort of a pejorative name, or what is it? What's the origin of this name? Iboiluhu Beis Yazik Tanan with an ayin. Is it called a Beis Yazik or Beis Yazik Tanan, or is it without an ayin? What's the difference? Beis Yazik Tanan. If you call Beis Yazik with an ayin, at least it's a compliment. Your name. It says Vayas Keir. They cleaned it out. Vayis Kaleir. They removed all the stones and all the pebbles. So it's a good thing. They gather people together, and that's what it is. And Beis Yazik nine is lishna the tzaidu. It means like damage. You see, but who also bazikim? He was tied down with chains, and that's what they nicknamed this place Beis Yazik, because that's basically what it was. They were locked up. They couldn't leave this place entire Shabbos. I'm going to buy the Toshma. We just learned. So there's gedolos, when they arrived there was big meals waiting for them in the order kadesh, to give them love. We didn't want to entice them to continue coming. Doesn't that show that's a positive? Why would they call it such a negative name as Beis Yazik without an eye? So Gemara says, no, that's not an eye. Dilma, Tatyav, that's not exterior. Maybe they did both. On the one hand, they wanted to entice them, maybe feel better. On the other hand, there are rules that they were for a long time they were constrained until Rav Gamliel came along and changed it. So therefore, they called it prison camp. Can't tell. So there's no idea why. Next mission is now we're going to talk a little bit about what kind of questions they would ask. Because even though they relied on the Eidim, they still had to make sure the Eidim weren't fantasizing, and that they actually saw what they claimed that they saw. So Kate said, "Boykin is Eidim. How would they investigate these Eidim?" Zuk Shabarish, in the very first pair that came is Boykin Oisai. They would check them out. The first bring in the oldest group, the most prestigious pair of Eidim, and they're the ones that they would interrogate. Tell us about the moon that you saw. We want to know what the position in the sky was and so on. Was it Lifnei Hachama or was it La'achar Hachama? Because the new moon you only see is only visible on only in the evening, sunset. You can't see it in the morning. It's very, very small. So while the sun is very intense, it completely obscures any vision of this new moon. And therefore we're asking if you saw it before. What do you call it? Was it before like in front on the right of the sun, or was it behind the sun? Was it on the north of the sun, or was it the south of the sun? Because the sun travels from east to west. But where was the moon? Ahead of it or behind it? And basically, when we say Lifnei Hachama, it means in front of it or to the north, and behind the Chama means to the south. Okay, and this way they would know whether they're telling the truth or not. That's question one. Final dream. We'll ask exactly the same question. If it's to north, it's before the sun. It got there before the sun in orbit, and if it's the south, it's trailing the sun. The next question is how high was it in the horizon, standing from Earth, according to what your view is? And which you have the moon, the crescent of the moon. So then you have the inside of the moon, which is always dark. And then, which side was it facing? That inside of the moon, was that facing the sun or away from the sun? And because that the inside of the moon, why does it look like the inside of the moon is because the sun is not shining on that side. The sun is shining on the other side. So if they say that concave, that that indent that was facing the sun, then obviously they're not telling the truth. And and how wide was it? If they said that the moon was traveling in front of the sun, it can't be true. So we know that they saw something else. And asked all these questions. Then they brought in the second witness. So they're asking the same questions. They're both saying the positions in the sky are exactly the same, but then we say they're consistent. We have a good pair of Eidim. What do we do? We don't go through the same interrogation with every single pair of witnesses. What for? We already have one set. That's all we require. So all other groups of Eidim, they're only asking the key points. You see the moon, where was it? But we didn't necessarily interrogate them. In fact, we don't even need them at all. Can you imagine how disappointed they would be? They traveled all this way and Machal Shabbos, and then the Eidos was not even necessary. So you have to make them feel that they're contributing. To give them love, we want them to come again. Says the Gemara, you're asking two questions, whether it's before the sun, which really means north, or whether it's behind the sun, which means south. So it's the same question. Amar Abaye says Abaye, Pegimosa. We were asking the Pegima. The Pegima is that part of the moon that cannot see. The crescent, you have the crescent, and the rest of the moon is called the Pegima, which cannot be seen. So the question is, Lifnei Hachama, was it facing the sun, which is impossible? Or La'achar Chama, was it facing away from the sun? And Im Amar Lifnei Chama, facing the sun on a klum, because it's impossible. That side of the moon is dark side, and if it was facing the sun, it would be the light side. So it's not possible. Rabbi said, might have seen, it says in Pasuk, Hamshel v'fachad imai, that the Eibishter was in control, and with pachad and fear were imai with him. And then it says, he makes peace above. What does that mean? The moon, the sun never saw the dark side of the moon, because as soon as the sun looks at the moon, it becomes bright, and the moon reflects the sun. Nor the light pegimasa shall keshes, so too by the keshes, it never saw by the rainbow, it never sees the indent side of the rainbow. That's what's facing us. What it sees is the bright side of the rainbow. Pegimasa shall, why doesn't it see it begins on why does it see the whole Shaddai? Because then the moon would feel bad that the sun is so bright and it isn't. And Pegimasa shall keshes, why doesn't it see the inside of the rainbow? Because when you have a bow and arrow, the inside of the bow is facing the shooter, and the archer, and then you pull it back and you shoot all kinds of arrows. So if the inside of the rainbow would be facing the sun, then those people who worshipped the rainbow or worship the sun will believe that the sun was shooting these arrows or pellets, whatever was happening. Gida Komeshadya. They'll believe that that the sun is preparing itself to shoot all kinds of arrows on non-believers and scoffers and sinners and so on. So we didn't want to give them ammunition to their avodah zarah. We were having more avodah zarah. They actually couldn't avoid creating the sun and the moon because people worship them, but things that he could have avoided or changed, he did. Says the Gemara, we asked how high was the moon in the sky, which direction was it facing? We learned one place, we learned if it was saying to the north, then Dvar Kayami. Then we say that it was facing the north, then it makes sense. But if it was facing south, it doesn't make sense. It can't be. But Tanya Ivcha, we learned somewhere else, just opposite. If the moon is facing the south, then it is. Then it's correct. It can be the north. Like Kasha, depends on the summer and the winter, because the sun is in different parts of the sky in between the summer and the winter. Because in the summer, the long days, the sun is much further away, much larger orbits, and it's sort of in the northern hemisphere, the northern side, and in the winter, it's on the southern side. It always goes east to west, but is it along the southern part of the sky, the northern part of the sky? So in the summer, it's the northern part of the sky, and in the winter, it's the southern part of the sky. So therefore, like the summer, it can be in the north. It's in the north, and it can be in the south. And in the winter, it's in the south and not in the north. Tell me what we learned. Echad Eimer. We talked about how high it is in the sky. If one of them says Gavoya Beis Mardois, one of them says that it was two Mardois, Mardois is a kind of a measuring thing. That it's as if it was two measures up in the what do you call it? It's actually a stick that he used to use to jab animals that they should keep on moving. and they was a whatever, it was a certain size, and each one said that the moon looked like it was two of these things high, and the Echelem Gimel. I want to know it was like three of those things high. Eidusim Kayemis. That means people we're not experts, so that's a mistake that we can tolerate. But hey, one guy says three, one says five. Then obviously it's two different parts of the sky. It's impossible. Even though that turns out to be that they're not being, somebody here is not telling the truth, they mistaref to another edus. What exactly does that mean? That Rashi learns that either one can join if another aid comes along and says he saw the new moon, and he either agrees with the one who says three or the one who says five. He says two, he says four, he says, then they can join up with him. What Teisha says, you can join another group of Eidim about another matter altogether, because we don't know who's telling the truth, who's not telling the truth. So in another matter altogether, they can be used. Okay, we'll stop here and we'll continue tomorrow, Mitzvah Shem.